Coming up on Retro Bits. Welcome back to another news and updates episode of Retro Bits, where we'll take a look at some of the exciting changes in the world of the MiSTer FPGA. Sound good? Then let's get started. The Capcom Play System 2 is the successor to the CPS1 and 1.5 that we looked at in the Spring Updates video. This multi-arcade platform was released in 1993 and saw Super Street Fighter II as its first title. Like its predecessors, the CPS2 featured a Motorola 68000 CPU, now at 16 MHz, and the Z80 processor also makes a return for managing sound duties. The hardware drives a 240p display with 4096 on-screen colors out of a palette of 16 million, with 900 on-screen sprites and Q-Sound positional audio. Like the CPS 1.5, the system logic is divided across multiple components. The A board provides a JAMA interface and contains the main system hardware, while the B board houses the game code itself, along with a battery-backed memory holding the decryption keys required for the games to operate. As with its predecessor, once this suicide battery expires, the game is rendered non-operational, the intent being to prevent bootlegging. Of course, the encryption was eventually cracked, allowing for the various forms of emulation we have today. The CPS2 core for the MiSTer was developed by Jose Tejada, aka Hotego. While it has been available for months as a private beta for his Patreon supporters, he recently made the CPS2 beta available to the general public via his GitHub page. You can now download it directly, or use the latest version of the Update All script to install it. Just make sure you have the beta cores option enabled in the Hotego Updater menu. The core features a whopping 27 new Capcom games, including brawlers, fighters, shoot-'em-ups, puzzle games, and more. A number of popular franchises make their appearance in the list, including Darkstalkers, Street Fighter, Marvel, and Dungeons & Dragons.
Ready?
Man, I played a ton of Puzzle Fighter on the PlayStation back in college with my friends. I seem to have forgotten how to play though. That, or I was never very good in the first place.
Are you ready, true believers? Capcom and Marvel have joined forces once again to bring you it's Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter! Look! Spectacular miss out on the enjoyment of a lifetime. Behold, Amazing Fantasy! Don't miss the most amazing tag team fighting game ever! Are you ready for a new challenger? Victory! Come join Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter! Choose your team! Captain America!
If you're a fan of the genre, CPS2 has you covered with a massive 10 new Street Fighter titles, including the crossovers with Marvel Superheroes, X-Men, and Capcom's other games. Sorry, I have no idea how to play this game. I've said it before, but I'm an FPS gamer, so button mashing is about the most I can do here.
Capcom presents Marvel vs. Capcom. Marvel vs. Capcom.
There's no shortage of visually impressive shoot-'em-ups for this core. There are simply too many to show, but here are a few I enjoyed. That intro was too good not to show in its entirety. At least now we know that Earth was really hollow and great battle is beginning. Are you great? We are great. Also, Capcom is great. And last but not least, Hotego is great for bringing us this amazing CPS2 core. Next up is a handheld that almost everyone is familiar with, Nintendo's Game Boy Advance. Released in 2001, the Advance was a runaway success, eventually amassing sales of over 80 million units and outselling the competition by orders of magnitude. The Game Boy Advance core for the MiSTer has been out since 2019, released by Robert Pape, aka FPGA Zoomspaz, who has developed many cores for the platform. I hope I said that right, but it approximately translates to "for fun" in English. Just recently, a branch of the main code called GBA 2P was released that supports multiplayer by means of link play. Some of the features of the regular GBA core are absent in this version, such as save states and cheats, but let's take a look at what it does do. To get started, you'll need to download the RBF file from the GBA 2P branch of the Game Boy Advance GitHub page and place it in your MiSTer's console directory. Next, you'll need to create a new directory named GBA2P in your Games folder and copy over the BIOS and ROM files you want to use. And that's it for setup. Once you launch the core on your MiSTer, you'll find some new options in the menu. The first option allows for split screen play. You can show player 1 or 2 in full screen, as well as split the screen horizontally or vertically. You can also decide which audio track you want to hear, mix them together, or split them out over the left and right channels. Link play works by running two entirely separate Game Boy Advance cores in the FPGA, one using SD-RAM and the other using the DDR3 memory. HDMI output allows for any of the display options we just looked at, and the analog board's output always shows player 2. While the Game Boy Advance core isn't backward compatible like the real hardware, an OG Game Boy core is available on the MiSTer. During the production of this episode, that core received an update that gave it link play support as well. System 16 was first released in 1986 as the successor to the Sega System 1 and 2. While several variants were made, there were two major versions, starting with the 16A shown here. Like the Capcom Play System, Sega's hardware was powered by a Motorola 68000 variant running at 10 MHz, along with a Z80 for sound management. System 16 could display 4,096 colors from a palette of 98,000. 128 on-screen sprites were available, and hardware sprite scaling, a distinctive feature of Sega games from the era, was implemented in the 16B hardware shown here. Also like the CPS, System 16 boards featured encryption keys and a suicide battery. About 40 games in total were released across all variants of the platform. With CPS2 now public, Hotego has started to release beta versions of the System 16 core to his Patreon supporters. The hardware utilizes a more advanced encryption than the CPS2, and the 16B has an additional memory controller that is yet to be implemented, but Hotego has most of the 16A games working and is making progress on 16B titles as well. The WonderSwan is a handheld console that was released exclusively in Japan by Bandai in 1999 at the budget price of 4,800 yen, or around $45 in modern currency. The company was no stranger to electronic entertainment, having previously marketed the Intellivision in Japan as well as the popular Tamagotchi line of products. Available in 9 colors, plus several limited editions, the device featured a 3 MHz 16-bit NEC processor, 64K of RAM, a 2.5-inch monochrome display, and 4 channels of PCM audio. The WonderSwan Core was also released by FPGA Zoomspass, the creator of the Gameboy Advance core we looked at previously. Most official titles are playable, and the core sports some advanced features such as save states, fast forward, and rewind. Notably, these features are now also available in the NES, Lynx, Game Boy, and Game Boy Advance cores from the same developer. The WonderSwan was developed in partnership with Gunpei Yokoi, creator of the original Game Boy. Due to his premature death in 1997 in a car accident, Yokoi never saw the product released. The system boasted a massive 40-hour battery life from a single AA cell. Games were playable in both portrait and landscape modes, and the hardware featured a unique button layout to support this. In December 2000, the WonderSwan Color was released. Once again, it was only available in the Japanese market at a price of 6,800 yen, or around $63 today. Notable changes included a slightly larger 2.9-inch color screen showing 241 colors from a palette of 4,096, but with only half the battery life of the original. The Swan Crystal, a redesigned color model, was the last iteration, released in 2002. It featured a TFT LCD screen with improved response time and a redesigned case. Between the original and the color, there were around 200 games in total. Many were anime titles, as well as popular franchises, such as Square's Final Fantasy and Bandai's own Digimon and Rockman, or Mega Man in the West. Other major publishers, such as Namco and Konami, had titles on the system as well. Many of the RPGs and interactive stories are all in Japanese, so I've had to skip those in favor of action games where I can tell what's going on. By the end of the WonderSwan's run, around 3.5 million units had been shipped, and it had managed to capture around 8% of the Japanese handheld market. The system went into decline with the release of the superior Gameboy Advance in 2001, but it did enjoy a few years of success given the narrow scope of its market. Back in episode 35, I demonstrated 5 ways to use MIDI with the MiSTer, including connecting a real MT32 and SC55 using this MiSTer MIDI interface from Legacy Pixels. A number of viewers left comments saying that I omitted another good MIDI option, so allow me to correct that mistake now. This is the Roland USB MIDI interface, the UM1. At around $40 US, it's a bit more expensive than the MiSTer MIDI option, but it's also more flexible as you can use it with a Mac or PC, and the latest version is even iPad compatible. In my earlier research, I never came across anything that indicated that the UM1 was natively supported by the MiSTer, but I may have just missed it. Anyway, after reading your comments, I knew I had to try it out, especially since I already had one on hand, thanks once again to Simon Vereshockner and the extended loan of his creative MIDI goodness. Once you connect the UM1 to your USB hub, a new MIDI link option will appear in the MiSTer's menu. Make sure you don't connect it to the I/O board's user port though. Well, that was easy. Thanks to everyone who left comments and clued me in on using the Roland UM1. This is another great option for connecting your MiSTer to real MIDI hardware. The fact that it's supported right out of the box just continues to demonstrate how well thought out and mature MIDI support is on the MiSTer. Alright, let's bring this thing home with a sample of the latest arcade cores that have just been released to the public. Okay guys, I'm gonna have to call it here. There are simply too many updates and new releases to cover everything, and I have to draw the line somewhere. I've already got 9 more MiSTer updates in the hopper, so if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, please leave a comment, do the things with the buttons below, or consider supporting RetroBits through our brand new Patreon page. You could be the very first. I hope you enjoyed this bit, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on RetroBits.